Info. 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 Fictional detectives are characters in detective fiction. These individuals have long been a staple of detective mystery crime fiction, particularly in detective novels and short stories. These detectives include amateurs, private investigators and professional policemen. They are often popularized as individual characters rather than parts of the fictional work in which they appear. Here are the top 5 fictional detectives in literature. 5. C. Auguste Dupin. Le Chevalier C. Auguste Dupin is a fictional character created by Edgar Allan Poe. Dupin made his first appearance in Poe's 1841 short story The Murders in the Rue Morgue, widely considered the first detective fiction story. He reappears in The Mystery of Marie Roget, 1842, and The Purloined Letter, 1844. Poe created the Dupin character before the word detective had been coined. The character laid the groundwork for fictional detectives to come, including Sherlock Holmes, and established most of the common elements of the detective fiction genre. In The Murders in the Rue Morgue, Dupin investigates the murder of a mother and daughter in Paris. He investigates another murder in The Mystery of Marie Roget. This story was based on the true story of Mary Rogers, a saleswoman at a cigar store in Manhattan whose body was found floating in the Hudson River in 1841. Dupin's final appearance, in The Purloined Letter, features an investigation of a letter stolen from the French Queen. Poe called this story perhaps the best of my tales of ratiocination. Throughout the 3 stories, Dupin travels through 3 distinct settings. In The Murders in the Rue Morgue, he travels through city streets. In The Mystery of Marie Roget, he is in the wide outdoors. In The Purloined Letter, he is in an enclosed private space. Dupin is not actually a professional detective, and his motivations change through his appearances. In The Murders in the Rue Morgue, he investigates the murders for his personal amusement, and to prove the innocence of a falsely accused man. He refuses a financial reward. However, in The Purloined Letter, Dupin purposefully pursues a financial reward. 4. Miss Marple. Miss Marple is a fictional character in Agatha Christie's crime novels and short stories. Miss Jane Marple doesn't look like your average detective. Quite frankly, she doesn't look like a detective at all. But looks can be deceiving. For a woman who has spent her life in the small village of St. Mary Mead, Miss Marple is surprisingly worldly. But as she often points out, she has had every opportunity to observe human nature. As she often points out, there is a great deal of wickedness in village life. What makes Miss Marple so effective as a detective is her ability to blend into the background, and for her shrewd intelligence to be hidden behind her love of knitting, gardening and gossip. Unassuming and often overlooked, she has the freedom to pursue the truth. Criminals and murderers fail to realize that with every stitch she is not only making a cardigan, but solving a crime. Ms. Marple first came into being in 1927 in The Tuesday Night Club, a short story pulled together into the collection The 13 Problems. It was first published in the December 1927 issue of Royal Magazine. Christie never expected Ms. Marple to rival Poirot in the public's affections, but since the publication of The Murder at the Vicarage in 1930, Marple's first full-length novel, readers were hooked. Ms. Marple graced 12 novels and 20 short stories during her career as an amateur detective, never paid and not always thanked. The Miss Marple of the 13 Problems is decidedly more shrewish and Victorian than the later character, who is often more forgiving. She certainly changes with the times, even down to wearing plimsolls in 1964's A Caribbean Mystery. Miss Marple never married and her closest living relatives are her nephews and nieces. Her nephew, the well-known author Raymond West, and his wife Joan, initially Joyce, crop up most commonly in her stories. Marple also employs a selection of maids, all young women from the nearby orphanage, training them in her Victorian way. 3. Philip Marlowe. Philip Marlowe is a fictional character created by Raymond Chandler. Marlowe first appeared under that name in The Big Sleep, published in 1939. Chandler's early short stories, published in pulp magazines like Black Mask and Dime Detective, featured similar characters with names like Carmody and John Dalmers. Some of those short stories were later combined and expanded into novels featuring Marlowe, a process Chandler called cannibalizing but is more commonly known in publishing as a fix-up. When the original stories were republished years later in the short story collection The Simple Art of Murder, Chandler did not change the names of the protagonists to Philip Marlowe. His first two stories, Blackmailers Don't Shoot and Smart Alec Kill, with a detective named Mallory, were never altered in print but did join the others as Marlowe cases for the television series Philip Marlowe, Private Eye. Marlowe's character is foremost within the genre of hard-boiled crime fiction that originated in the 1920s, notably in Black Mask magazine, in which Dashiell Hammett's The Continental Op and Sam Spade first appeared. Underneath the wisecracking, hard-drinking, tough Private Eye, Marlowe is quietly contemplative and philosophical and enjoys chess and poetry. While he is not afraid to risk physical harm, he does not dish out violence merely to settle scores. Morally upright, he is not fooled by the genre's usual femmes fatales, such as Carmen Sternwood in The Big Sleep. Chandler's treatment of the detective novel exhibits an effort to develop the form. His first full-length book, The Big Sleep, was published when Chandler was 51, his last, Playback, when he was 70. 7 novels were produced in the last 2 decades of his life. An 8th, Poodle Springs, was completed posthumously by Robert B. Parker and published years later. 2. Hercule Poirot. Hercule Poirot is a fictional Belgian detective created by Agatha Christie. Poirot is one of Christie's most famous and long-running characters, appearing in 33 novels, 2 plays, Black Coffee and Alibi, and more than 50 short stories published between 1920 and 1975. Poirot's name was derived from 2 other fictional detectives of the time, Marie Belloclone's Hercule Pope and Frank Howell-Evans' Monsieur Poirot, a retired Belgian police officer living in London. Poirot first appeared in The Mysterious Affair at Styles, published in 1920, and Exited in Curtain, published in 1975. Following the latter, Poirot was the only fictional character to receive an obituary on the front page of the New York Times. Standing at a diminutive 5'4", although there have been various interpretations of this on stage and screen, Poirot is described in writing as having an egg-shaped head, often tilted to one side, and eyes that shine green when he's excited. He dresses very precisely, and takes the utmost pride in his appearance. Perhaps even more famous than the man himself, is his moustache. Luxurious, magnificent, immense, and dedicatedly groomed, the moustache precedes Poirot into a room. It's a unique talking point, it's provocative, and it has a character all of its own. Poirot's friend Hastings puts us straight in the picture in their first book, The Mysterious Affair at Styles, where we're informed that as a detective, Poirot's flair had been extraordinary. While some detectives scrabble around on the floor searching for clues, Poirot uses psychology and his extensive knowledge of human nature to weed out the criminals. He will of course take physical evidence into account, but more often than not his combination of order, method and his little grey cells does the trick. Poirot's cases are invariably finished with a typical, dramatic denouement, satisfying his own ego and confirming to all that he is truly the greatest mind in Europe. 1. Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes is a fictional private detective created by British author Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Referring to himself as a consulting detective in the stories, Holmes is known for his proficiency with observation, deduction, forensic science, and logical reasoning that borders on the fantastic, which he employs when investigating cases for a wide variety of clients, including Scotland Yard. Edgar Allan Poe c. Auguste Dupin is generally acknowledged as the first detective in fiction and served as the prototype for many later characters, including Holmes. Conan Doyle once wrote, "Each of Poe's detective stories is a root from which a whole literature has developed. Where was the detective story until Poe breathed the breath of life into it?" Holmes and Watson discuss Dupin and Lecoq near the beginning of A Study in Scarlet. First appearing in print in 1887's A Study in Scarlet, the character's popularity became widespread with the first series of short stories in the Strand magazine, beginning with The Scandal in Bohemia in 1891. Additional tales appeared from then until 1927, eventually totaling 4 novels and 56 short stories. All but one are set in the Victorian or Edwardian eras, between about 1880 and 1914. Most are narrated by the character of Holmes's friend and biographer Dr. John H. Watson, who usually accompanies Holmes during his investigations and often shares quarters with him at the address of 221B Baker Street, London, where many of the stories begin. Though not the first fictional detective, Sherlock Holmes is arguably the best known. By the 1990s there were already over 25,000 stage adaptations, films, television productions and publications featuring the detective, and Guinness World Records lists him as the most portrayed literary human character in film and television history. Holmes's popularity and fame are such that many have believed him to be not a fictional character but a real individual. Numerous literary and fan societies have been founded on this pretense. Avid readers of the Holmes stories helped create the modern practice of fandom. The character and stories have had a profound and lasting effect on mystery writing and popular culture as a whole, with the original tales as well as thousands written by authors other than Conan Doyle being adapted into stage and radio plays, television, films, video games, and other media for over 100 years. So that's it for today. What are your thoughts about top 5 fictional detectives in literature? Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and click the notification bell. If you want to learn facts about something or someone, just watch on info.